Some of you will have heard a little bit about this yesterday around the market for nature-based solutions, where we know that there are, I suppose, a couple of major challenges facing us: finding skilled and experienced suppliers. It's a major roadblock for the implementation of nature-based solutions in many local authorities. And we spoke briefly yesterday as well about the financing of NBS can be challenging, especially in the long term, the ongoing management. And we know that, through the Green Deal and from all the discussions we've heard over the last day or two, that the growing investment and market demand for nature-based solutions is it's going to expect it to increase, I suppose, exponentially over the next 10 years. So, a tripling of investment between now and 2030. So that in itself leads to a lot of challenges around where do we find those skilled suppliers, and how can we meet this projected market demand in terms of servicing the market. So just then briefly to look at how and where nature-based enterprises might fit into the whole, I suppose, model of the planning, the investment and the operational costs of the nature-based solution. In planning, we have identified, I suppose, that really landscape architects, biodiversity experts, consultants have a really important role in terms of helping local authorities and communities co-create and co-develop their nature-based solution and bringing their expertise in there. We know from, in the capital investment, this is where the experts, the specialised contractors and so on come into play. And very often then what we're looking at and what we're seeing emerging are opportunities for sort of social enterprises, community interest-based companies to work with local authorities and taking over or co-leading the long-term management of some of these nature-based solutions projects. Just very briefly, I hope, and if you haven't already, all helped yourselves to the box set of the Connecting Nature guidebooks. Please do so. But just to draw your attention to the two guidebooks around financing and entrepreneurship strategies that are part of that pack. And for those of you online, you can access the Connecting Nature guidebooks through the Connecting Nature website, and they're freely available to download. But just so you know, there are, I suppose, essentially 3 steps in a financing and entrepreneurship strategy. Securing the solid support base, so that's working with and getting the high-level political support, working with all of the stakeholders, planning the sustainable business model and financing for your solution, and then the challenge of securing funding and looking beyond the usual suspects, if that's possible. And that obviously depends on the stage of development of the NBS, but more about that I think in our conversation and in the information in the guidebooks. And then when it comes to the entrepreneurship, and this was, I suppose, Esmee is really our expert on this. I feel a bit of a fraud standing here talking about entrepreneurship strategies, but it really is about creating an awareness and an alignment within, I suppose, authorities and again with stakeholders. And I think this is something that some of our cities might have had a bit of a question mark over when they started. Why have that entrepreneurship as part of what we're doing? But I think it's become really evident now, based on their experiences, which we'll hear about, how important it is to integrate entrepreneurship into their strategies, forming those strategic alliances, and then the delivery of specific support programs to bring on and to support the growth of nature-based enterprises. So I'm going to leave it there, actually, and I'm going to join the panel over here, and we're going to have, I suppose, a conversation. And as I say, it's more about a reflection of, I suppose, the experiences that our cities and investors have had over the last number of years in the cooperation. So hopefully you'll hear some interesting insights and learnings. Please think of questions and ask them. We'll monitor the chat online as well. If you have any questions, put them into the Q&A tab, and we'll try and get to them as well. Right, Agnieszka, I'm going to start with you and put you on the spot, I think, first. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's great to see you again. You identified in Poznan a number of innovative funding streams to finance your nature-based solutions. And your kindergarten initiative, I think, was one of your early, I suppose, innovative financing programs that you developed in collaboration with your Department of Education. How did that come about, and how does it work in practice?
Okay, thank you, Isobel. Can you hear me? I don't know if you know, but in Poland, Poznanians are famous of being quite frugal. So not only we are looking for other financing sources outside of the city, but we are coming constantly to our budget, municipal budget, to find some spare money. And here it comes the aim, the introduction of nature-based solutions. And what we discovered, that in Poznan we have 160 public kindergartens that they've got their own gardens. So it's quite interesting, with a big potential greenery in the city that is densely built up. But also it's a potential for the districts that are in other part of the city, and they are quite concrete. And heat islands there, so it would be good to use this space as already existing ones or advance it. Another issue was the fact that our Department of Education has a separate program, modernization and extension of gardens in kindergartens. So every year 10 kindergartens received some money for reconstructions, but there was no information how they should take care about the garden, what there should be. And the third fact is that if we've got municipal facilities and we would invest in it, then we keep maintaining on secure level. That's also very important. And this way we create the mechanism of financing natural playgrounds in Poznan in cooperation with the department. So we add our additional money to the money from the education department, and we devoted them to very professional project design made by a very talented, experienced landscape architect. And she designed individually for each kindergarten that wanted to take part in our program, design project with natural playgrounds.
So it's been hugely successful then, because I think you started off with a pilot of 10.
Yes.
And where are you now?
No, we started in fact with 3. That was before starting Connecting Nature, and during the project we did the scale up of the project. So now we have 41 natural playgrounds in Poznan. So quite a lot, but we also add to it also the educational level. We introduce also eco-demonstrators, which are supporting also the teachers and children how to use the natural playground. So now we have also in 70 kindergartens, we've got about 150 micro installation delivering the tools for ecological education.
That's fascinating. Yeah, just to see how it, from a little seed, and how it can generate, I suppose, such interactive and educational tools for kids as well. Esmee, I know you want to come in and ask something about the Enterprise Summit last year.
Yes, I do. Yeah, this is working. I mean, we had the Connecting Nature Enterprise Summit last year in Poznan, and I think that kind of really shone like a light on entrepreneurship in Poznan and kind of how you have supported nature-based enterprises and kind of your kind of great entrepreneurship strategy, I'd say. And we have also here Jędrzej. So I was kind of wondering if you could tell a little bit about how your collaboration came about from your perspective, and I will ask Jędrzej after the same question.
Okay, so from our perspective, it was very interesting how last year big online but very big event brought so quickly impact. So almost immediately, because just one day after the summit, Jędrzej Damski called us and said that he was a participant of the summit and he saw interesting materials on forest in the city, that we want to devote part of the city to the forest, and if we've got the financing for this or not. We were talking, and from this conversation came very good idea that we could be a part of a crowdfunding concept delivered by Reforest'Action organization. But I think the details, what does it mean, crowdfunding on global scale and how it fits to the Poznan, Jędrzej will tell you more. It's okay?
Yes, perfect. Yes, and then Jędrzej, yeah, if you could kind of introduce Green Up, I think that would be interesting, and then also kind of what motivated you to work together with the city.
Yeah, I think I will start with explaining that when you work with afforestations, you always have the same problem, because the plans are always very ambitious, and everyone wants to plant trees, everyone likes forest, but when you have a look at the projects, you basically don't have enough plots for this kind of activities, and it's difficult to find suitable ones. Yet Poznan made this brave and not so popular decision and decided to to give up the plot that's supposed to be a golf course and to plant a forest there. So that was huge, and it was announced during the Enterprise Summit. This is the moment when I arrive, riding a white horse with the army of trees behind my back. Kudos to all the Lord of the Rings fans. And but to be serious, I run the business in which I cooperate with Reforest'Action. That is one of the biggest afforestation hubs in Europe. And they basically plant trees all over the world. And after I heard that Poznan is looking for alternative form of financing, I felt like this forest-based solution that we offer is something that can be applied here. And I approached Agnieszka immediately, and I got immediate response that we should do it, and this is how it started. Of course, I also know how important are urban forests. I like the projects that we work in close to the city, because it is a crucial element of the sustainable and resilient development of the cities. And I think I don't have to explain much on the benefits coming from the forests itself. But yeah, this is also a huge thing that the city decides to increase the forest cover within the borders. And last but not least, inside the city, there is a structure that is responsible for the management of the forest around Poznan, and they gave us the kind of a guarantee that the trees that we plant will be preserved in the future, and the forest will be safe and sound. So yeah, the result is that we already planted over 50,000 trees on the area of 10 hectares. So if we're talking about Poznan, which is one of the biggest cities in Poland, I think it's huge. 10 hectares. There's a lot of ground. So simple as that.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that's a big success story, I'd say, from the Connecting Nature project as well. Maybe that's
Indeed. I want to move to Eleni now, joining us from Nicosia. And Eleni, your NBS project is actually highly ambitious, isn't it? I mean, consisting of this green mobility network around the city. And I suppose you have the larger parks, public parks, which to a large extent the funding for the restoration and improvement comes from the public purse. But there are also an awful lot of derelict spaces that you've identified in Nicosia. And having done that, then you've created or devised a new initiative to tackle, I suppose, the restoration of these spaces and introduce more green and social facilities to the local communities. And you're doing that with the private sector. So tell us a little bit how you've done it and bring us up to speed on how the initiative is progressing.
So, as you very well said, Isobel, complementary to the network of linked open and green spaces, which is the main exemplar, our team proposed the Adopt a Park scheme. The idea was born due to the main challenge that our city, like all cities in Cyprus, face to involve the private sector in this kind of initiatives. As a larger park, as you already said, in Cyprus are all financed and operated by the government. So the identified opportunity was the existence of lots of small green spaces, most of them underused or abandoned in the neighborhoods, which had the potential for pocket parks. These spaces are owned and supposed to be designed and maintained by the local authorities, the municipalities, that don't have the capacity to do so. And because of that, they are more open, let's say, in exploring the idea to involve the private sector to invest and develop these areas. So this scheme is being developed to promote long-term partnerships between the local businesses, enterprises, and the local government in order to maintain and beautify the neighborhood parks of the area of intervention, the district of Nicosia. There are two different roles for the businesses that will be and are involved, some of them. So on the one hand, we have the larger size businesses which are located in the area that can participate in the scheme as investors, as business adapters, or CSR strategies. And on the other hand, the smaller businesses, including nature-based enterprises, such as landscaper engineers, gardeners, and any other relevant services that provide relevant services that can be involved in the planning, implementation, and maintenance phase of each individual project. So our team has first identified the first set of parks for the adoption in collaboration with our municipalities, our member municipalities, and also developed the guidelines that need to be followed by the applicants for the scheme. Of course, with the help of the Forest Department and the municipal officers that are responsible for these parks. Each of the 9 member municipalities of ANEL have an individual call based on the guidelines we provided. For now, we have 2 calls open, the one of Strovolos and Lacha. So each of the selected businesses that will adopt a green space need to put together a plan that will meet these guidelines that we have already said with the help of, as already said, the Forest Department, the municipal officers. So the business adopter will sign a contract with the municipality, which is the owner of the land, and the Nicosia Development Agency. And their responsibilities are to plant and maintain the selected areas and commit to its ongoing care for 5 years period. We're thinking of having the option to extend this period if both sides are happy to do so. So it's also important to mention that the municipality, along with our agency, has set a team to monitor all the phases of the process and verify that everything is going as planned.
It's really interesting. And there are 2 things, I suppose, that have jumped out at me there. I like the idea, I think, of this 5-year commitment, because it actually gives time to kind of embed and, I suppose, develop that collaborative partnership and plan for the future, and if successful, would be really good. Can I ask you, how many parks are currently being regenerated, or little plots of land? Because I think when I last at the end of 2021, you had just signed the first contract.
Yes. So up to today, the most active, let's say, municipality is Strovolos, who's announced its first adoption, Ialisum Park, that's adopted by the FML ship management. So yes, now we have 4 more parks that are about that we're close to the adoption, let's say, 3 in Strovolos and 1 in Lacha. Hopefully, we will announce new adoptions by the end of May.
Oh, that's super. That's really good to hear. Eleni, delighted to hear that. And we're going to come back to you now and talk to you in a little while about how those parks are going to support the local entrepreneurs in the area. I'm not sure if there's any questions in the chat. And yet, I haven't. Nothing has come down to me, so we might move on then and ask Kimia to take the stage.
Yes. Yeah. So Kimia. Yeah. No. Go. I'm just talking over for you to prepare and for the presentation to be up. So Kimia actually won the TNOC, the Nature of Cities MBS pitch competition in March, and that's why she's invited here. So she's a nature-based enterprise called Vertical Forest, and she's now gonna present that to us, and then we'll have a little chat about it.
Yes, well, that's good. Hi, I'm Kimia Witte. During the day, I work with the stem cells as a scientist, and during the night, I explore microorganisms in my research as an artist. But at the weekend, I plant trees in the Scottish Highland where I can breathe the clean air and get mesmerized by all the beautiful shade of green that I can spot among the trees. I think this is a video. I know I would like to be able to live and work in a smoke-free, full of thriving green ecosystems, and I'm confident that most of you here like that idea too. But how can we make this idea come true? How can we create such a space while working with what we have? I think, does it go to? Yes. What we have is often a limited space in the center of a city like Glasgow that perhaps we do not want to sacrifice any remaining usable space from people and their businesses. I guess we also want to avoid increasing our carbon footprint by digging out the already existing infrastructure. Having said those, now it's time to introduce you to the Vertical Forest, a community interest company that can help us create green urban spaces by turning already existing concrete building facades into tree using live paint. The live paint is made with lichen that can grow on inaccessible vertical spaces with a small footprint of a few millimeters in depth. The beautiful thing is, through partnering with nature in form of a small microorganism, we are creating a live paint that is not toxic and it's compostable, while it creates sustainable ecosystem, helping increase the biodiversity bottom up through homing insects that feed birds that will bring a small fairy mammals back to the city. The photosynthetic part of the live paint will help remove the carbon from the air, just like a tree. And its remaining part will help remove pollutant from the air by capturing and turning them into beautifully vibrant pigments. The pigments that an artist like me can use to create beautiful live murals that will act as a coat and extend the life cycle of the underlying infrastructure. Because unlike plants, like mosses, they don't have roots, they are rootless. Now imagine this. You're walking through a forest of buildings, covered with living, breathing skin. And the closer you get to the center, to the high rises, the more dense, colorful, and dynamic the urban forest becomes. With my science background in stem cell and tissue engineering and my art practice in nature-based microbial technologies, I'm very excited to be directing Vertical Forest CIC that was registered last year in Glasgow. Given this great opportunity to present vertical forests at the Connecting Nature Impact Summit, I'm looking forward to speaking with you all, especially people from different cities' councils, and while expanding the team and potentially getting more further funding for bringing the live paint prototypes for Glasgow as our first pilot city. And thank you.
Thank you, Kimia. That was a great presentation. Yeah, the ficus. Yeah, I think that was very inspiring, and it's also great. I know that you have participated in the nature-based Accelerator program in Glasgow as well, and I think it would be nice for you also to kind of share your story as that as also something that has resulted out of the Connecting Nature project, and also because you have a background as a scientist. So I'm very curious about your experience being in an Accelerator program.
Well, I said I was working with the stem cell and doing tissue engineering, and this kind of understanding of the micro world, it's something that is kind of a side project, is my kind of not the work that pays my bill, but having that fascination and like every one of you in this room caring about working with nature, I was only in my own world, and it was just a word of mouth saying that there is this incredible program in Glasgow, and I did not know what I was getting myself into. So I said yes, and I didn't know if it's something that, I didn't know what kind of applicants are participating. And then when I joined, it was one of the most beautiful things, because regardless of the ideas they had, all they had in common was caring so much about how to making something sustainable, fair, accessible, and the most important thing, working with nature. And for me, that kind of finding like-minded people that care about something that I was only having it to myself, it was encouraging. And then things kind of is fascinating. When you become part of a network, it grows, and there is other opportunity comes to talk to others and share resources and expertise, and this is all kind of it started from there, and it's continuing, and I got myself here, and I don't know how that happened, but yeah, so it's been the feeling of being part of something that is bigger than you. I think that's the most beautiful encouragement that I got from Connecting Nature Accelerator program in Glasgow, and yeah.
Kimia, you mentioned that you have set up your business, Vertical Forest, as a community interest company. Why have you done that and not gone down the sort of more private route?
Yes, well, I may know a bit about microorganism and do a bit of art, but I have no idea about business, and I don't know about the infrastructure, the business models. But I knew that I wanted something that is flexible. I wanted something that is sustainable, which by that I mean it has different route or different access to funding bodies. So I wanted something that is not limiting what type of collaboration and funding comes through. So with the community interest company, so the most important and beautiful part is it is for the community, with the interest, in this case, is nature-based solution that can help the community. And with the community interest company, you can make sure that it stays like that. You cannot change it back to any other business models afterward. But then you can work with private sector because there are some shares that is available, but 2/3 of the shares is locked for the community interest, and that's, you could work with third sectors and others. So it's an incredible flexible model that kind of keeps you going in a sustainable way while having access to everyone and not excluding anyone. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. That's a sort of a interesting and insightful observation, I think, into that. Can I very briefly ask you, you mentioned that you want to talk to cities. Are they your sole target market? Or, I mean, I know you're still only at prototype stage, but what is your market and where do you see yourself going?
So I think, well, I want my customer to be policymakers at the regional level. So that means councils member or housing association. But the end user, I want that to be the end user that is people who is benefiting from that. I want them to have that product for free. The same as for animals and everyone. So I want the customer who is the policymaker deciding how to build the roads or better the infrastructure for the whole of community to help pay for development of these paints for every micro ecosystem of every city, because it is working with the locally sourced lichen from that micro ecosystem. So in a way, for me, this is refreshing to be somewhere that there are lots of policymakers. I usually, well, never have exposure to them. So, and being able to talk to them and knowing what is important for them, how can I work with them in what are their needs, as overseeing a planning for a new, I don't know, part of a city, and what's their population thinks about a project like that, bringing microorganisms to all their walls. And so for me, getting those insights would be incredible, because then I can help to develop it with them and then have it free for the people who use it at the end.
Thank you. And then maybe the most important question. You already just said what you would like, what kind of insight you would like to get from your potential customers. But what do you need as a company? What are your next steps?
So nature is so incredible. I mean, we had yesterday the natural intelligence, and so what vertical forest does is, it's kind of, it doesn't need to figure out everything because nature already did. So it's working with nature, building with nature, and then living with nature. So it's kind of ticking all those three boxes. But what I would like for vertical forest is, so it's living as a prototype in the highland as an art form, but for every city, urban place, it has its own microclimate. So the paint needs to be adapted for that. And that requires a bit of capital, which means there needs to be a space, there needs to be equipment, they need to be consumable, and one or two research assistants that they can work through my protocol and create that. And what I would like is for every city to use the resources found locally and the research talent that is provided locally to make the product locally. So it will be a model that kind of working with the fungi, algae, and all those microorganisms locally with their people. So that is something I very much like.
Great. Agnieszka, I want to turn to you. Thank you, Kimia. Can you talk to us a little bit about the entrepreneurship strategy that emerged in Poznan? Because you mentioned that you were working with a landscape architect in developing these kindergarten spaces, but there was only one landscape architect, I think, that had the capacity to do so.
Yes, exactly. When we started implementation of our natural playground, but also other nature-based solutions like floating gardens, like opening family allotment gardens, we noticed that we expect from the contractors quite a lot of new things. And we didn't have before the special strategy for nature-based entrepreneurship. Of course, in the City Hall, we've got departments responsible for relations with investors, with business activity on a daily basis. But there was no any strategy dedicated to nature-based solution or maybe green and blue infrastructure, because still the term of nature-based solutions is not so well known in the city, in the Poland. in Poland. So we decided it would be good to base on our experience with our flagship projects and evaluation of it, that we would like to inspire other contractors, but also decision makers who can order the service of introducing nature-based solution. And we would like to promote, inform about the benefits of nature-based solutions. And we prepared a set of trainings, and we have started with natural playgrounds. They've got different forms. Firstly, there were meetings in physical form, but later when came the pandemic time, we had to also prepare the webinar. The first webinar was launched during the Poznan Enterprise Summit. And we also prepared a set of documents, video materials to support implementation already on spot. So basically, we start with one type of nature-based solutions, but we have in mind that other also needs such kind approach. And what we did now, it's the catalog of nature-based solutions that we would like to promote different type of nature-based solution to the whole city. So I think that if we at one day later, we can share with experience also with this catalog and next steps we will take.
Super, thank you.
Yes, and then I think we'd like to go to Eleni, back to Eleni. So you already mentioned the Adopt a Park program, but can you maybe elaborate a bit on how you are also supporting nature-based entrepreneurship and nature-based enterprises as part of that program?
Yeah, sure. So as I've already said, we had the private sector has split into two different roles: the larger size businesses that are the adapters, and the smaller size businesses that, including nature-based enterprises, have a supporting role, let's say, to the scheme. So, for example, the Allison Park that was adopted by the FML ship management, the company has hired a landscape engineer and a gardening services company to implement the plans and create the park. And it's important to mention that also the Department of Forest Department also helped the company to find the relevant people to work, the relevant enterprises and bees. So yes, this is how it works. They have a supporting role. The scope is to have as many as possible involved in this initiative, and each of the adopter find new NBs to implement the parks and make them happen. So they have a supporting role through the process, and it already happened with the Allison Park because they have hired these companies to help them, and I believe that this is how it will go with the rest of the adoptions. We have a list of NBEs, local NBEs, and when we sign the contracts, we give them this list, and they can choose, or if they know some other NBEs that can help, they bring them in and they sign the contracts between them to do the plans and of the parks. So this is how it mainly work.
Super, Eleni, thanks for that. We look forward to, I know our project is ending, but we look forward to touching base with you every now and again to see how this initiative...
I hope that we will have 4 new parks before the ending of the project. So hopefully...
We hope so too. You can tell the Commission.
Yeah, we will. I'm pretty sure that we will. So, yes,
Brilliant.
I will update you soon.
Great. Listen, just before we wrap up, I want to ask Jędrzej to invite some thoughts from you as an entrepreneur on what you've heard and What advice would you have for people like Kimia starting off in as a nature-based enterprise?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if I'm the right person to to sum up everything and give advices. I'm just a simple entrepreneur, and I'm also at the beginning. I start to cooperate with Reforest'Action, with afforestation projects. But yeah, being here and listening to all the success stories, it just gives hope. I mean, it works. We base more. We use more and more solutions with nature, and this gives some optimism. Of course, there are some crises crouching, and we can't forget about it. But well, when using trees and lichens, we can make great things, and that will work. That will be beautiful, that will be practical, and I'm sure there is a lot of financing just waiting for us somewhere. And yeah, as you can see, and I guess sometimes it just happens, like in our case. Yeah.
Before we throw it out to the floor there, if there are any questions, Kimia, what advice would you have for new startups? You've just been through it.
Well, I actually don't have advice for them. I advice for policymakers and activists or people who care about this thing. Is someone like me would have never found this audience if it wasn't for someone saying to someone else to come to this and to do that. So creating accessible platform and showcasing your existence as a big community, and then finding those odds and weirds like me, and then saying, hey, so you have an idea, but we have the path how to kind of help you go through that. And perhaps, as I said, I do not have the business or law background or the economic, but I have the science and I have a bit of art. So kind of finding partners who share the same vision. And then, why I'm asking, like the platform, for example, you yesterday talked, these are incredible because it can fill the gap. I do not need to be all other kind of part of this vision. I do not need to be the spokesperson. No, I'm doing the talking, strangely, but I do not need to, I can only be the thing that I'm really good at, and then everyone else joins in and we can all collectively do something that we really care about. So my advice is for all you, not for those people with the ideas, actually. But yeah, sorry, I didn't answer you.
Oh, that's great, and great promotion for the platform there. Thank you, Kimia, for that. Any questions coming from the audience or online? Anybody have anything that they'd like to ask our panelists? There's one here at the front, Shoshana. And Katrina is bringing the mic now.
Oh, thank you for very interesting presentations and dialogues. I have a question to Kimia. You said that what you are used for this purpose, it's very interesting, but I read there about removing the pollutants. What kind of pollutants they are removing?
Yes, so I don't know how much time is it, but I want to give a very, very small backstory. Is this whole lichen idea started in one of the abandoned mines in the Scottish Highland, and there they used to extract lots of different minerals, lots of heavy metals, from lead to many others. And as you know, lead, cadmium, and all these chemicals are quite toxic, not only to human, but to lots of organisms. And the incredible thing is lichen, because it's a composite organism, it's not one organism, it's a combination of 2 or 3 sometimes. So there is a fungi part to this kind of mixture, and the fungi cannot help itself to gather whatever it finds in the environment, and usually the chemicals. So when my observation and this is another mine here, which is incredible. I'm into mines. But the lichens there, they started human not knowing. They caused the course of evolution to take place because they brought so many heavy metals to the surface, not knowing that it will cause mutation, it will cause adaptation and evolution. So many lichens thrived and many variety formed. So they take these heavy metals, they turn them into aggregates that they are no longer toxic, but because they have a metal, they're metallic in nature, they create the pigments when the photons hit them and then hit back our eyes. So most things we see around ourselves, the colors, the pigments are most times are metallic in nature, and lichens kind of aggregate them, make them non-toxic, and creates the pigment that I like to work with and I've been working with. So lots of, yeah.
So interesting. They, from one hand, they can be like bioindicators, for example, for heavy metals, and also for our studies, we are using them as bioindicators for radionuclides.
Yes.
Yeah, and in this case, it can go as a bioremediation materials also.
Yes, there is one part I didn't say, the natural indicator. As a scientist, I usually try to make sense of the world at the micro scale and explain it to the science community, but I sometimes feel like the public need to have the access to those knowledge. And sometimes trying to make the invisible science visible for majority of people is by using art in a way. And lichen does that, and it takes away the middleman, which is the scientist, the politician, the journalist, and it makes reading nature accessible for people. So as you said, the indicator, the lichen will change, the way you perceive the color would change because it's alive. The humidity, the UV index, the pollution, everything makes the color to appear different. And citizens now can read that, and they can adjust their behavior. They know how the microclimate of their city is. They don't need someone else to tell them because they can read nature directly. So the indicator part of that is incredible, and it kind of has that element of understanding nature directly with visuals and things without using words. Yeah.
Anyone else? I hope we haven't put you all to sleep. But I'm, here I am chairing a discussion, and I didn't even bring a watch, so I have no idea if we're over time. We're out of time. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you all for bearing with us and your attention today. Thank you so much to our guests, to Eleni joining us from Cyprus, and to Kimia, Agnieszka, and Jędrzej. And let's go have a cup of coffee. And to those of you online, have a coffee, do some remote networking, virtual networking, and we'll see you all back for the next session in about 30 minutes.